Hello friends, I hope everybody's doing well. My name is Artie and welcome to another video here. Okay, so today we're going to be working on the 1967 Gravely L8 snowplow tractor here. And I noticed last year, maybe the year before also, that the starter sounded very sluggish on cranking it over, especially when it was really cold out, like 10 or 20 degrees out. And I'm realizing that the brushes in the starter are wearing out, and that's why it's very sluggish to turn the engine over. This is a Delco Remy starter, and they used to use this brand starter in old GM, General Motors cars. I think up until the 90s maybe they used them, but Gravely chose to use this brand starter for their electric starter kits. Okay, another problem that you gotta watch out for here is sometimes if you have this chain too tight here, it'll put a strain on the starter also. Okay, so being that the starter has a strain on it, what it's doing also, it's drawing a lot of current out of the battery, and these tractors don't have a charging system on them. So I want to address this before it gets too cold out, because the starter could actually just quit on me while I'm out working with it, you can use the manual starter strap on this. I think it's got the pin in there. What you would do is you would undo the chain, and then you could use the starter strap to pull it to start it up again. But let me show you what it's doing right now. And there's another thing I want to show you too before we get to pulling the starter off. I did have a good starter. I have a starter that I know is good. So what I did so far is I put it up in the vise here and I painted it already, and I'll show you that in a minute. But let me show you what this is doing here. I disconnected the spark plug wire too. It doesn't sound that bad right now, but today it's like 50 degrees out. But when I first started it up, when it was in the shed here, you could tell it was pretty much straining to start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect the battery, but you really don't have to, because it has the one cable that comes from the starter switch to the starter, and the only time this has juice to it is if you engage the starter switch here. So I'm gonna undo that. I'm gonna disconnect the battery first, and then we'll move on. I think you can see it in here. See the starter gear? It has a dowel pin that holds the gear to the starter shaft here, and I've had a few of them where I guess they were rusted out, and the dowel pin in there, a dowel pin is like a straight pin you would hammer in there. It has an opening on one side. I've had a couple of them shear off. And what I did for that, the remedy for me, I don't know, you might not like the idea of doing it. I did it on the C8. That was one of the problems that the tractor had, but I never recorded it. Is what I do is I drill the starter gear hole out to a 1/4 inch, and the starter shaft too, and I put a nut and bolt in there. And it's very important to use either a lock nut or a lock washer when you do that. I just examined the starter we're going to be using. The dowel pin looks good. I was thinking about going ahead and drilling it out, put a 1/4 inch bolt in it. If it's not broken, don't fix it, that's my motto. So okay, so I'll get to disconnecting the battery right now, and we'll pull this starter off here, and I have to let the other starter dry because I just painted it. So I'm going to try to do this so I'm not in your way here, and maybe I'll just move the camera over a little bit. Okay, so I'm using a 1/2-inch wrench. I'm just going to disconnect the negative side of the battery here. Or the positive, it doesn't matter because there's no metal to hit here. You should always disconnect the negative terminal first before you do the positive, in case you have metal alongside what you are working on and you don't arc against the metal. If you take the negative off, then if you arc against metal, taking off the positive, you won't have a problem. So, first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take the, I don't know what size this says. I think it was 9/16, maybe. So I'm going to take the cable nut off first here. Okay, so the inner nut's turning, it looks like. You don't want the inner nut in here to turn, because then you'll break the contact wire off here. So, what size would that be in there? 9/16 as well. I'm just going to use needle nose paste to hold that, I guess. If I can find it, yeah. Being out in the road salt and whatnot, everything gets seized. Yeah, it's coming off okay now. I wish I let you hear the starter when I did the initial startup this morning when it was in the shed. But I know the starter's bad here. I have another starter that came with the 1962 Gravely that we fixed up, which I sold. That he said the starter was rebuilt on that, but what was happening with that was this whole shaft here was seized. I was able to unseize this. But then when I went to test the starter, it was just like arcing out. So there was something arcing out inside the starter. Maybe one day, because I'm starting to run out of parts, maybe one day we'll address that and see what's going on with that. Okay, so the best way I figured to do this is I'm using a 9/16 wrench and socket with the ratchet. And the easiest way to do it, I found, was to take the bottom bolt out first. Because all this tractor does is go out in the winter and snowplow, so it's always cold out. And one day, even last year, I was worried this thing wasn't going to start again. So it's better to just address this right now. I have the ground wire to the battery hooked to this top bolt here. I figured it was the best place to put it. Yeah. I put the nut and the washer back on this here so we don't lose anything. You even in focus, can you even see what I'm doing here? This is not really much of a video, but alright. So I just hooked it back to the cable here. I just put that aside here. Usually if you just tilt this over a little bit this way, you can get it off. Sometimes it's easier to just take it off from the bigger sprocket and then catch it on the little sprocket when you go to put it back on. Okay, so I'll be back to you in a bit as soon as that starter dries, and we'll put the starter back on it and see how it cranks over then. Okay, so it looked like a real clear blue sky and the sun was out and everything. The next second, it looks like it's gonna rain right now. Okay, so anyway, what I did was, where that cable goes onto the starter here, I just took and I taped it up. Because you don't want to get any paint on that, otherwise you won't make good contact. And I went ahead and I painted the starter, and I'm hoping it doesn't rain. I buy this black glossy paint, and it's a Walmart brand, and it goes on pretty good. This can of paint used to be like 97 cents a can. I think it's up to 2 something now. Like everything else went up in price, but it goes on nice, and it also dries quick. So, alright, so I'll be back to you in a minute. The big wind is here, everything. Okay, so I think the starter might be dry enough to put it back on. I think I'm going to do that right now before we get in trouble with the weather here. Okay, so we'll get this thing back together. I don't know if I have to move the camera back a little bit, but I'll try it here. So I'm just going to stick this back in here. Hook this onto the gear. Always make sure your chain stays on the big gear too. Here. Set that on the tire. Trouble here. Listen to that wind. That bolt seems kind of short, but I can't even put a washer on there or anything. Well, I could put a washer on here, but I don't have one on hand right now. But this holds on pretty good. I never have any problems with that. I do have a washer on the other side here and the cable. Or did I maybe I have to supposed to put the washer on the outside? I don't know. At any rate, it's fine. Pass that through. I think I'm going to put the washer on the other side here. Should use washers on either side, but I might off camera just go ahead and throw a washer on there. I should actually put new, I should order some new starter chains for it. We can tighten that up now. Should always use the socket on the side with the nut. I think that's good. You don't want the chain too tight on there. And then you don't want it too loose either, because then the chain will jump off the big sprocket. It got cold all of a sudden now too. It doesn't feel like 50s anymore. Okay, that's tight. Now we're going to put our nut on. Put the cable on and put the nut on. And I'm going to use the nut that I originally took off this starter. Sorry, I'll be right back there. This nut here is just a little smaller than the other one. We were using a 9/16 before to take off to let off the other starter. This one here is 1/2 inch. Let me make sure I got this on here good. Right. And this is like a lock nut. This has, so you don't need no washer with it. I figured since we restored this tractor last year that I would paint the starter, make it look halfway decent. Okay, I'm going to hook up the battery and we'll see if it cranks, how it cranks. I might come back to you on the cold, you know, a day when it's colder, and we'll try it when it's colder. That'll be the real test here. Let's see how this one works. Well, you could... What was that noise? That didn't sound too cool. Wow, what's all that vibration? I don't like that at all. Something don't sound too cool here. I'm going to start it up, so mind your ears. That all of a sudden didn't sound too cool. Let me try it again. That didn't sound too cool there, where it was cranking over without the spark plug wire hooked up. I don't know, I guess it's okay. It really cranks over a lot quicker. It starts up a lot quicker now than it did before. So, yeah, maybe I'll show you what I did on the other tractor here. Okay, so this is the C8. This is what I did here. I think during last year when I plowed with this, when it had the old engine on it, it snapped. I had to do it out in the cold. So what I did was I drilled the gear out through the starter shaft. I did it right on the tractor. I didn't take the starter off. And I put a 1/4 inch nut and bolt in here. But I'm noticing already that I didn't use a lock washer. I was probably in a big rush. You're in a big rush when you're plowing. You gotta fix stuff. So it looks like I'm either gonna have to put a lock washer on here, or I'll just double nut it to make sure it doesn't come apart here. But the starter on this one works good. This tractor seems to be working good so far, you know, knock on wood. But we're just gonna try it here when it snows. We'll just use it here, and this is like the backup tractor in case the other one breaks. So I guess that's about it. This one's done. It's got enough oil in it. I did change the oil last beginning. I think I used it a couple of times last year in the winter, and then I changed the oil. So the oil level's good on this. And it looks like we have a good starter here. It's a winner. And I'll see you when it's these Gravely's. I don't know if I have anything more that needs to be fixed in the meantime. I'll make a video. Otherwise, I'll see you when it snows with these Gravely's. I hope somebody gets something out of this. Even like on a small lawn tractor, you could actually hear that the starter is like grunting and cranking over slow, and that would mean the brushes in the starter are no good. So, alright, thanks for watching. I guess I'll see everybody on the next one. Stay safe. Take care now. It's 3 days later and 28 degrees out. The 1973 C8 started right up with no problem. And I'll show you, like, the windows on the truck here are frozen. So you can see that it's cold. And now we're gonna go in and see how the 67 L8 starts. I'm not going to choke it, and I'm not going to turn the gas on yet. I just want to see what kind of cranking power it has now. I don't know, it's not as sluggish as it was, but it is still sluggish for some reason. Let's see how it starts up. When we turn the gas on, I'll choke it, give it some throttle here. Could be the battery's a little low too, because it had the original starter problem. Well, it's a heck of a lot better. I'll tell you that. But I do have to charge up these batteries though a little bit, because I've been starting them up, shutting them off, and I haven't really charged the batteries up on them. But it was really cranking slow before, so I guess it was a good idea to change out the starter before I got in trouble with it. That's all. Take care.